Welcome everyone to our weekly cybersecurity article review conversation for today, Wednesday, December 6th, which is our last episode for 2023. Guys, can you imagine? We are actually at the end of, well, at the last month of the year. Not the end, but close to the end of the month. So, time is definitely moving by. And so much has actually happened, over this past year for many organizations. So, let me also welcome my team of great people. Paul Robinson, Jonathan Fisher, who continuously and reservedly join these conversations to add value and also to provide insightful perspectives. Not to mention our, additional regular members who definitely would want to be on, but for, other reasons are unable to join. So I definitely appreciate the value, the time that you guys have actually taken to had your insights into these conversations that also, I mean, adds value to those who tune in from week to week to develop their cybersecurity skill set. So, guys, before we actually jump into our main article, I also, we can always agree that this year has actually been quite eventful. In the realm of cyber, can all agree on that. As recently as yesterday, when I was reading the Guardian, in their post, in one of their reports, it stated that UK nuclear site attacked by state-linked attackers. And these are the things that organizations, the security teams, leaders and CISOs have to deal with within all of these organizations. Not to mention the impact of these various incidents on our organization. So, on that note, guys, I want to kick off today's conversation by asking you to both share your most, eventful cyber incident for 2023. Giving reasons why, and also in some of those lessons learned. This might be a little bit something that, well, many people might not want to even mention or talk about or reflect on. But guys, what do you want to share?
Yeah, I think for me, a watershed moment in 23 is the solar wind situation that's taking place. We can go down the list of technologies, AI, quantum computing is now becoming more mainstream, but really the thing that struck me was the legalities around the SolarWinds case and lawsuits and litigation and things of that nature, and the fallout from that, which is now going to security executives and the personal liability they face from taking their jobs with companies. You're just seeing a lot of addendums to employment contracts. You're seeing a lot of different things that are coming out that put, I mean, unreasonable stress, in my opinion, on cybersecurity professionals to be perfect at their job. And that's really what they're asking. They're saying we don't want to get attacked. We don't want to experience, a data breach. If it's legally determined a breach, we don't want our SaaS applications to go down. So you're going to have to take on liability to make sure that we don't do it. And that's a big thing going into 24. It's going to be very interesting to see how cybersecurity professionals respond to this.
Yeah, I'll agree. For me, um, there's been a lot of stuff that's happened in this last year, right? It definitely seems like there's been a lot of ramp up in cybersecurity attacks. All the studies are showing that. But the thing that I think that has really driven home for me is that people probably don't really think about it that much until it hits close to home or at, right? I've actually experienced that a few times this year, it hitting close to home or at home. In a small community earlier this year, the regional medical center was hit and pretty much shut down it and its clients or client clinics for a few weeks. That they weren't really able to work effectively, right? And for those who've been watching, right, and I'm watching how I talk about it, but my organization was actually hit by a cybersecurity event too. So there's a lot of lessons learned from that. But again, people don't really take it, maybe take some of their security practices for granted until it actually hits close to home. So, one thing I think, as Paul was talking about, is that, there's a lot that's demanded on cybersecurity professionals. Oftentimes, the cybersecurity practices or thought towards it from leaders outside of the cybersecurity realm is minimum until it hits close to home, and then they want to overreact. So I think it's a way for cybersecurity professionals to try to have those conversations, like we've talked about many times during this last year on this live stream, of having those hard conversations and trying to get senior leaders on board to understand the importance of why we're needing to set up certain practices, why we're needing to have certain tools, how we need to have certain things configured. And hopefully, they can take that into consideration going into the next year.
Sure.
Yeah, Jonathan.
Go ahead. Paul.
Oh no, I was going to say, Jonathan. I think one of the things that you mentioned was hard conversations. As we go into 24, communication is going to have to be key. So I was at a meeting the other night, and we talked for about 45 minutes around threat hunting, and I was shocked and kind of embarrassed to see how far I was able to follow along from a technical perspective, the zeros and ones piece of it. And it was great. It was a great technical conversation. I'm not, belittling that. But as I'm sitting there, I'm like, how can you convey this risk to the business? Because the business is going to see one slide of this and they're just going to glaze over because they just don't think about it from that perspective. But I think, Jonathan, as you mentioned in the two cases that you talked about, let's pick on the regional healthcare center. We're not talking about threat hunting or generative AI as it pertains to cybersecurity and automating our security tool stack. We're talking about lives at stake. It really is that serious, because if you're not able, the poignant thing that you said there, and I don't know if our audience picked up on it, but the inability to provide quality of care service from a healthcare perspective could put someone's life at risk. So if I have something that's going wrong with me and I'm allergic to a medication and they can't access my files and they pump me full of medication that I'm allergic to, my life is now at risk. And that's because of a cybersecurity incident. So as we go into this, whether it's communicating to senior leadership, our employees, our dev teams, we have to make sure that the communication to these different, sections of business understand the actual physical risk or business risk that could be involved by cybersecurity being compromised at an organization.
Great. I think all the points that you guys have actually mentioned is very important. It also goes so much details as it relates to these various happenings over the year. You've actually mentioned something. Both of you mentioned something very important: is having those cons. And I think one of the challenges that many organizations have is the fact that hear about these, cyber attack, these various incidents. You will hear about business continuity, to have those plans in place. But until you have actually experienced this, that is where what actually makes a difference. So you do not know who you are as an organization or as a team to an organization. Your ability to recover or to be, that's one of the key things in terms of resiliency. When you do you bounce back or deal with these various happenings. And many people, as Jonathan mentioned, is that possibly that happened to me or understand until it really affects them. It's a total different experience. So I definitely agree with the fact that I believe that technical team, the IT team, the cybersecurity leaders should actually be find to sit with people who have the skill set, also people who have actually been in these situations, to maybe connect organizations that have been in various incidents to see how it is that manage to these various challenges when they do happen. So I think this is very, very, important moving forward. For cybersecurity professionals. Um, so as it relates to the article that we have to actually look at this point in time, and based on the article, it's managing cyber risk, and I'll also be placing a link so that you guys can actually access this article. It's very important. Valuable article for you to take the time to look at. And it says cyber risk, what we can learn from the financial services industry's risk quantification published by Forbes. So, Paul, Jonathan, what is the focus of, as well as some of the main points coming out of this article that you found, interesting, and why? But before you actually answer this question, I always like to, remove assumptions depending on who might be listening. So, just to highlight, risk quantification, as mentioned by the title of the article, for those who need clarity, is a process of assigning a numerical value to a risk in order to better understand and communicate its potential impact. And this can be done using a variety of methods, such as a likelihood, which is the probability that risk will occur, and also impact, which is the severity of the consequences of the risk if it occurs. And that's in a nutshell. This topic in of itself can become, far complex in of itself. So, guys, back to my original question.
Yeah, I think I heard somebody make the statement that cybersecurity is the one facet of business where you can't quantify what's going on. So, for example, if you have a SaaS organization and you have sales goals and sales targets and you miss your sales target by 10%, then the business can say, okay, we missed our sales target for 10%. That's bad. How do we recoup the 10% and then, make it happen to where we don't lose the 10% ever again? Like you can have those conversations in cybersecurity based off of quantification, but we're not having those conversations. So that's why the business is so important and vital to be involved in cybersecurity conversations, because then that's where you get the buy-in. If you go to your CFO and say, I need to buy a $500,000 firewall, for what? Like, you're not making the business case of it. But if you can say, yeah, the way that our environment is structured, and now we're a hybrid environment, and now we have people working all over the place, and we need a way to make sure that we're protecting people inside the network and outside the network. And if we don't, here is the financial risk that we have, then that's going to help to get more buy-in. So quantification, associating, even if it's a guesstimate, an educated guesstimate, is so important, because then that's what true risk is, because now you know the risk. Now you're not guessing. Now it's like, okay, if I don't do this or we don't implement this policy and procedure, we could be at risk of losing $15 million based off of downtime, legal fees, recovery fees, things like that. Then the organization can say, okay, well, we have $15 million set aside in a cyber insurance policy, or we have $15 million set aside in slush funds that we can pay it, so we're willing to take the risk. That's where you can understand the true risk of the organization. We have to take the guessing out of what it is that we're doing and actually associate hard numbers, hard data, of time. Jonathan, you talked about the experience that you had. That's a discussion that you should have in the beginning. And I'm starting to lean more towards identifying failure modes. That's a Six Sigma term. But failure modes up front to say, okay, if we are down for 3 weeks because of a cyber attack, what does that mean? Are people getting paid? Are goods and services going out? Are people able to do their normal work? Are lives impacted? Are our vendors impacted? Are our customers impacted? And then coming up with a quantifiable way of reacting to that and saying, okay, is this a risk that we're willing to take by not acting on it? And if we are, what are the strategic ways that we can act on these risks to help us along the way?
Totally agree. Like you said, quantification is hard to do in cybersecurity because you just don't know, hey, is spending this money on this tool, is it going to be worth it in the end, right? I think that's why a lot of professionals, we like to go to the qualification just by doing that simple, matrix of, the likelihood versus the severity, and oh, it's a high or it's a low, or, moderate. But really, what does that mean as far as breaking it down? The thing I like about the article is, some people might have some negative, maybe a perspective on the way that the banking industry is or the financial industry is, just because there's been a few bad actors, a few bad, banks that have kind of been well known and spread out through this year, through their failure to do any risk management or to follow through on that stuff, right? But if you think about how many financial institutions there are compared to the 3 or 4 banks that failed or had issues, the industry in general has it set up very well for doing risk assessments. You think about it, in a regular business, how many different departments are there and how many people are doing risk? You might have a small team, but when you look at the banks, and if you really look at the roles in the bank and the different types of kind of risk management roles that they have, you have roles for all sorts of risk, right? You have the insurance risk, you have just the business risk. There's just a whole lot that I've seen out there, so it's not just a small team working, a risk for a large corporation, right? You actually have, hundreds of employees who are doing, finite little risks. And I think doing that, it helps break it down so that way it's more manageable. And hopefully banks are able to look at that a lot more with better perspective. If you have someone that can really deep dive into it, besides just having risk management lumped into their job description, something that they have to quickly do while trying to also fulfill all the other jobs, is the quality of that risk management and that risk assessment going to be good? It might be all right, but I think that's why we go to that qualification type of a viewpoint, right? Okay, let's just assign it as a low or medium or high. If it's a high, let's figure out what tool we can buy to try to mitigate that risk, right? That's how I think a lot of companies do it. Whereas in banks, if you have someone that's really deep diving and can really take the time to assign a specific hard number to a risk, it's definitely going to make it better, and something that can help really stick in the minds of leaders and help them to understand the importance of mitigating that risk and how they can do it. Right. I love some of the stuff it talks about with the roles, the models that they have. We have to move away from just using a simple, risk matrix model and saying that's it, right? Do we have to bring in other types of stuff like Paul was saying, is adding in understanding of Lean Six Sigma, of project management calculations, taking experience from all these other type of industry focuses is going to be helpful for cybersecurity professionals to really start to gather the right information and help them figure out a hard number to some of these issues.
Yeah, I totally agree with both. As you guys have actually spoken about this, I reflected before COVID. For me, I got in, to the job, was executing my duties. That extra, not to say that not spend the time to invest in researching, ensuring that I was executing my job effectively. But prior to COVID, that level of awareness, that level of networking, seeing things from a holistic perspective, that level of integration, talking about risk management, that was not something that was at the forefront of my mind in terms of actually executing my various tasks. For me, it was about getting the job done, ensuring and running. But the system is up and running for many people. But what is actually happening within the system from a risk perspective? So I think that that level of awareness, based on my relation with other persons in the industry, that this is not the case for everyone. There are people that are actually lacking that level of knowledge or intelligence as it relates to that holistic approach, understanding the risk, understanding the importance of project management, understanding the importance of actually having your risk registers. Looking at identifying your business asset versus regular assets. Aligning your overall IT objectives with meeting the overall organization or business objectives. That was not something on my mind. It's all about the zeros and ones, technicality, uptime, accessibility, availability. That was it. So I strongly agree with those points. But looking back at the article a bit, it speaks about an approach that security leaders should look at that. And you started, mention that point as well, Jonathan, as it relates to dealing with cyber risks. Share some light, further light on this subject. We're talking about the various models that can assist security leaders.
Yeah, I think one of the things in the article it talks about is that the fall of the long-term capital management program, where it points to even the best models can fail. And I think that's something that, going back to Riche, what you were talking about with resiliency being important, it kind of correlates with that to me, is that technology is just meant to fail. We have been fooled into thinking that technology, the uptime is 100%. There's a reason why even the best data centers say 99.59s or 69s. They never say 100% because there's always something that can happen. And the best laid plans can really come apart. So when we go into it with the mentality of something will go wrong, then it kind of transitions and shifts our thinking into, okay, when it does, how quickly are we able to recover from that? So instead of multiple weeks of the hospital being down, maybe it's just 6 or 7 days. And 6 and 7 days is still bad and it can cause problems, but it's a lot better than multiple weeks. Or if you have a SaaS application and it's down for a month and you cannot provide services for your customers, if you can cut that down to 4 days because you have a good resiliency plan, it's good. And I think, one of the other things that quantification is going to do for our industry is it's going to force us to simplify our approach to cybersecurity. Like Riche, like you said, it's always been uptime, zeros and one, SD-WAN, all this other stuff. And it's like, no, like focus. It's going to cause us to focus in on the business operations piece, because that's really all we care about. We don't care that MGM was hacked. We don't care that Target was hacked. We care we go to bed after reading that report, sleeping like a baby because our network and our data is safe. But the second we're woken up in the middle of the night that we're in trouble, now we really care because it's us. We're selfish. We're selfish beings. That's innate in us, and that's it is what it is. There's nothing wrong with that, but we have to look inward to say, okay, how do we survive? How do we get up as fast as possible when something happens?
Yeah, sure, important. Um,
Yep.
just to add to this, I mean, as we getting closer to wrapping up this, I mean, amazing conversation. I mean, we could always go on and on. There are so many points. So, I mean, can you guys, I mean, talk about the connection between how, um, or rather, I mean, should security leaders be seriously investing time to adapt this financial risk management approach outlined in the article to cyber risk management?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, nothing's going to hurt you by adding, more models or more perspective on what you're doing and how you could be doing things better, right? I don't think anyone's ever going to turn down a nose if they are offered a new model or a new way to look at things. Now, if they are, that's probably a warning sign that there's going to be an issue in that company, or if there is, or if there isn't, that that the cybersecurity program is not going to be well supported. So, I think bringing it in and trying to help influence those leaders to understand the value of looking at different models is going to be very important to one, make sure that you understand what their true risk appetite is actually going to be, and what they're willing to do to ensure that things are going to run smoothly. And if not, you at least then know maybe this isn't an organization you want to stay at for too long.
Sure.
Yeah, the current state isn't working. I mean, it's just not. When you're seeing organizations still being hit with DDoS and cross-site scripting, which have been attack vectors since the beginning of time, like to me, it's like, what do you have to lose at this point? I mean, if you have a solid cybersecurity program and the whole business is aligned and you're getting the budget and you're getting the buy-in and the employees are all on board, yeah, don't mess with a good thing. But I don't know many cases of that. So I think as creative as the criminals are with breaking into our infrastructure, we have to be as equally as creative and think outside of the box to protect ourselves.
Sure. So, guys, we're down to our last minute. So, I mean, what's your outlook for, I mean, your cyber outlook for 2024 in terms of, I mean, cyber threats to businesses and organization? I mean, will those TTPs or attack surfaces change? What's your outlook?
Keep coming to Cyber JA weekly article review. You'll get some good information here because nothing's changing. Nothing's changing. Nothing's changing. So this is a good forum. I'll shamelessly plug this thing. And again, Riche, thank you so much for inviting me this year, and I look forward to 2024 and bringing value to our community in the ever changing times that we have.
Great. And I truly
Yep.
appreciate it. I mean, well, go ahead, Paul. Jonathan, sorry, you were saying your outlook.
I was gonna say, I agree with Paul. Come here, try to listen. I mean, at least as we are looking up, current articles, at least it helps bring it to the forefront of what is going on, and in some of the new attack vectors that could possibly be out there. I mean, I definitely see consumer companies getting hit still, but I've definitely seen a huge uptick in industries like energy and health and protection, stuff like that. So I am seeing that that's probably going to be a continuing trend. Some of the commerce stuff is probably going to be more at a advantage or an opportunity for an attack. But I think a lot of effort is going to be to disrupting our daily lives through stuff that we use. Just like Paul said, it stinks that MGM got hit, but how does it really affect me? Not at all. I don't have any of my data with them. But you take out my hospitals, you take out my electricity grids, my food sources, my power sources, my water sources. It's going to affect me.
Oh, awesome. I mean, it was a pleasure, I mean, having you guys as well. I could not have done this without all of you guys' input. I mean, the various encouragement, the various, I mean, value that we have been able to add to each other. I mean, as well as the extended community. So definitely, guys, I mean, that's it for us today. And we definitely enjoy all the conversations and engagements we had with you all for this year. And we certainly look forward to even more value added conversations for 2024. So stay safe and I mean, be secure as best as possible. And also use all that you have actually gained over this year to actually make your organizations and your life a better one. So, guys, until 2024, we all see you. Take care. Peace.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye bye.
Okay, bye. Good.
Yeah. Merry Christmas. Have a happy holidays for everyone.
Okay, bye.